Right, I'm here at Low Carb USA, San Diego, at an enormous 3-day conference on low carbohydrate to solve a lot of modern ills. And one of the most powerful talks of the whole lot, and they were all good, was R.D. Dikeman telling us all about type 1 diabetes management and how lowered carbohydrate is an absolute imperative for type 1 diabetics, and showing so much data around that to me as an engineer, it's self-evident, it's an imperative. So delighted you're here, RD, for a short while to talk about that.
Thanks for doing this, Ivor. Yeah,
Oh,
thanks very much.
not at all. It's a pleasure, and for the people out there, it's an important thing.
Yeah. Well, the point of my talk was to go through basically two possible courses of action if you or your child becomes a type 1 diabetic. And those courses of action are the standard approach, which is pushed by all the professional diabetes associations, is encoded in the guidelines, and is what you're going to hear from your endocrinologist and dietitian. And basically, it's extremely counterintuitive. You'll learn that dietary carbohydrate raises your blood sugar. You'll learn that high blood sugar causes the complications of diabetes, from complications to the eye, to the kidneys, to the brain. Even in child, the complications come on fast.
Yeah.
But then you'll also be told to eat a diet of 50% carbohydrate. And if you have your thinking cap on, it might not make a lot of sense. So the talk goes through and explains all the complications that are going to happen, what your life experience is going to be. And in short, the guidelines that you're going to be told are not a system that you're going to follow that's going to lead to anything but a life of shortened agony. It's unbelievable what's being done to people with these guidelines. As a diabetic, you can expect your blood sugar to go between 40 and 400, literally between a state of severe hypoglycemia and ketoacidosis, on a daily basis every time you eat, if you follow these guidelines. Your A1C might end up being 8%. A non-diabetic, healthy A1C might be around 5%. That difference is a blood sugar that's about triple normal, and that's an average. You're staying at an average of 200, but your standard deviation, these swings that you go through on an hourly basis, are huge. You're literally your life is literally spent trying to stay alive as you come crashing down from one of these high-carb meals. And it doesn't have to be that way. We know now that this eating style is not appropriate for people with functioning pancreases. 50% of the population that follow this basically same diet, high on whole grains, low fat, are pre-diabetic. That's what you talked about. The same diet's been given to people without a pancreas, without the ability to make insulin. And it's straight down the tubes for those people. So what can you do? The only choice you have left is to get rid of those high carb sugar foods. Get rid of the grains, get rid of the starches, get rid of the sugars, get rid of the fruits. And then what's going to happen if you learn proper insulin management techniques, and it is not easy. You have to be on your toes. You have to constantly be aware of what's going on. But if you do all the work, you can keep normal blood sugars. And we now know that, not just anecdotally, there's a group of diabetics that are doing this. That number in about 1,000, 2,000 people, and they're getting normal blood sugars by taking the conventional diabetes advice, tossing it in the trash, and eating the way that we all were evolved to eat. If you eat healthy foods, and by healthy foods I mean meats and fibrous vegetables,
Eggs, fish,
rely on protein foods, it's possible to keep normal blood sugars if you do the work and learn how to really manage your diabetes, your type 1 diabetes.
And you know, RD, that's you said there, exactly that. These guidelines of 50+% carbohydrates and whole grains, which kind of is absurd because ancient humans never ate the seeds of grasses from the fields, and now we say it's natural. It's not. But even normal humans with a functioning pancreas, around half the population is being made metabolically ill by these high carbohydrate guidelines. But then you go to a type 1 diabetic who's the ultimate carb intolerant person. I mean, because without insulin, any carb at all, they're gone. And you tell them to eat 50-60% carb?
Yeah. And what's going to happen?
How insane is it? I mean, if people just thought about it.
Let's talk about, you're an engineer, let's talk about the quantitative.
Yeah.
If you take a kid, my son weighs 100 pounds, let's take him. But 1 gram of carbohydrate is going to raise him about 5 to 7 milligrams per deciliter.
Right.
So what's going to happen if he eats a standard 40 gram to 75 gram American Diabetes Association endorsed meal? His blood sugar might go up to 400.
Yeah.
And then what do they say to do? You take a lot of insulin. You count the carbohydrate and take a lot of insulin. It doesn't work. You're taking a sharp peak from the carbohydrate and trying to match it with a sharp peak from the insulin. It doesn't work that way. You can't match these things up. It's a stochastic, random process. The digestion of food, the injection of insulin, you're never going to get a match. The alternative, you eat protein foods which slowly glycate, and you take insulins which work slowly on the same time scale as those foods. Now you're matching these little humps together. And if you're off a little bit, you might go up to 100, 110 milligrams, but you're in control. There's no you're not constantly trying to save yourself from disaster. And that's the ball game. You get rid of the fast-acting carbohydrates. They're not good for you anyway. And then you can get some control. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of things that affect blood sugar. But dietary carbohydrate, you have no chance of controlling yourself if you're eating this food.
It's a bomb, basically.
And what about infants? You're talking about a 20-pound kid now compared to a 100-pound kid. That same gram of carbohydrate is going to raise him 5 times more because it goes like your weight. So now a little kid, a baby, is told to eat a meal high in carbohydrates, a little less. But the effect from the blood sugar on 1 gram of carbohydrate is skyrocketed. So these infants who are diagnosed and put on a high carbohydrate diet, their blood sugars are unbelievably it's so sad what's being done to people.
Criminal. And yet it's ubiquitous. It is 99% plus. Now you have a group, I met you through Facebook, Type 1 Grit.
Right.
So TYPEONEGRIT.
Yeah.
And that's where the thousands of Type 1 people are coming together, and they're all posting their blood sugars. And a normal blood sugar for a Type 1, sadly, is a crazy noisy graph of blood sugar swinging between, I don't know, hypo 50 up to hundreds.
Right.
And all these guys are applying science and engineering and, to be honest, common sense, really, and coming in with all these lovely tight controls that look exactly like a very well controlled, metabolically healthy, non-type 1 standard person.
That's right. That's right. And there's a lot of, the value of the group is, when we first started it, was to get these people together, young and old alike, because there's so many tricks and techniques.
Yeah.
And if you look at the site, everyone's always asking really tough questions, and we all trying to solve them and share our experience.
Together.
Like, how do you exercise, or how do you deal with a fever and your illness, or what do you think of this food? There's some foods that might be okay or might not. What's your experience?
Gotcha.
And so what you end up having is this, like I said, it's the largest group of well-controlled diabetics in the world.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? Some people found out about it, some endocrinologists like Dr. Eric Westman here, and they said, well, we should do a study of this group, because there's some N=1 out there, but there certainly isn't N= large number of people.
Yeah, put them together.
And we've done a pilot study. The Duke group did a pilot study of the group, and what we're seeing is average A1Cs from people before they started the group be at about 8%. A little bit less, 7.8%.
Really bad, yeah.
Which is a straight line to complications.
Cardiovascular disease, all the retinopathy, everything. Massive disease.
Well, we're learning more, Ivor, and people should know that these complications are detectable at diagnosis. In type 1, you're seeing a cascade of autoimmune attacks. And before you really officially full-blown diabetic, if you don't catch it early, you've experienced maybe a year of high blood sugars. Right. They can detect brain differentiation, cortical smoothing in children, gray matter that has different composition percentages from white matter from a normal child brain.
Wow.
Already at diagnosis. So if your endocrinologist is saying these complications don't happen till later, we're learning now that even if you are within this current American Diabetes Association guideline limits for blood sugar, you're going to get these complications. And this is published in the ADA journals, these facts.
Yes.
So anyhow, we took this group of people together. The Duke group studied them, made a survey, and we see that blood sugars drop down to about an average of 5.3%, around there. It's a huge difference. You're literally going to non-diabetic, near non-diabetic blood sugars. Quality of life metrics were also measured. Depression goes with diabetes, but when people get their blood sugars normalized, we saw these quality of life metrics increase. There's more hope for the future. There's less worry about hypoglycemia. People feel better. You still have to do the work, but it's a totally different life than riding this roller coaster up and down all day. And so now we're going to take that pilot study, and there's a bigger group from Harvard who is doing a study, and we hope to get that into a major medical journal soon so that we can push to change these guidelines, which send these kids and adults right down the tubes as soon as they're diagnosed. That's the hope that these researchers have, and I would have the same hope too.
Absolutely. Well, it's fantastic work you're doing. It's a pity you guys, I think it will be on the web, your talk though, which has all the data on the brain effects and, well, everything we talked about and more, but visually, and that should be out in dietdoctor.com hopefully shortly. So listen, thanks a lot, RD. Type 1 Grit on Facebook, and Dr. Bernstein in YouTube. Search for Bernstein. You've done a lot of interviews with him, and that's all you need to know for type 1.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for all the work you do, Ivor. You're doing a great thing too.
Yeah. We're all trying. Thanks.